Hello, my friends, and welcome to Embracing What is Real. I'm your host, Helane Lipson. Embracing What's Real is the forum to explore the nature of reality and the impact our current belief systems have on our lives. All of our deep-rooted old beliefs are what many of us use to judge ourselves and our actions. Our current belief systems impact every single choice we make. So when we feed our spirit with new, empowering ideas about the meaning of life, the meaning of our lives change. Today, I am so excited to welcome our special guest, Kelly Lachey. Kelly entered the shamanic path at the early age of 5. Her expertise is in helping individuals and couples understand and fine-tune their own energy for better physical, emotional, spiritual, and energetic health. With over 30 years of experience in reading energy and shamanic healing, her expertise is in midwiving souls through their journey to the fifth dimension. She's the author of Liquid Mirror and the co-author of Surfing the Transformational Waves of 2012. I am delighted to welcome her to Embracing What is Real. Hello, Kelly Lachey.
Hello, Helene.
I am so happy to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to talk to you about everything.
So, I would like to start by talking about your early life. You had quite a horrific experience when you and your mom were kidnapped by a satanic group. Can you tell us what happened to you?
It's really not, it's inconsequential, really, and I don't even have memory of it, so I wouldn't even label it as horrific. Because when my father took me out, my memory was removed so that I wouldn't have that damage in place. So I was healed from that. And it's the same for all of our stories. We learn from them. And that incident actually woke me up to what the dark is and how dark they can be. And that was a gift to me. And then my further training was all about how to see the dark and how to see agendas behind anyone's intention. So it's really not a sad story. I was only there for a week. I think my mom endured more than I did. My mom and I were separated. But it was part of my path, I believe, so that I could do the work that I'm doing now to reveal these dark ways so that we can walk through our lives with our eyes wide open.
Well, let's hear a little bit about your rescue, how your stepdad found you.
My dad had a remote viewing. He didn't know us at the time, and he had a remote viewing. He's an amazing being. He's a medium, and he was notified that there were starseeds that were caught in this underground facility where they planned on training us. And so he was shown by remote viewing where we were, and he broke in and got us out.
So your dad was a significant spiritual teacher for you. What were some of the things that you learned from your stepdad? What did he teach you?
Well, I had two teachers really. My stepfather taught me things, and then Moda was the being that he was a medium for. And the things that my father taught me were he would take me into town even when I was very young, and this was throughout my whole childhood, and help me read the dark intentions. And so he taught me how to see the dark through the religions, through the government, through the financial systems, through the medical system, and then intricately so in terms of being able to read people when they were being trained by the dark. And it's everybody would be blown away if they knew how vast this system was, if they knew how much of this was going on. So it was not an easy childhood because no one really wants to see all of that. But if we have the courage to take a look at what's real in terms of what's in charge of all of our systems here, then that helps us break out of the matrix of it, basically. And so he taught me awareness.
Now, you've described being able to read energy and learning about how to read energy. And I want to ask Kelly, how do you read energy? How can you tell if someone is dark? Do you see it in their aura, or is it a clairaudient thing where you hear messages about them? I'm asking, what is your process and what do you see in order to make that determination?
Well, I have several different techniques, but in general, when I'm just interacting with people, say in town, when I'm in town, I can sense their energy overall. It's just a sensing thing, and all of us have this. You just have a sense. You might feel a little put off by someone, or if someone's a little too forward, you can sense that, or you can sense the agendas behind something that they want to get from you. So it's like having, sensing these chords that people want to, catch you in. So that's the first level of that kind of practice, and we all have that ability. Um, so that's just one tier of it. And then when you're dealing with a dark artist, they are very good at wearing their white masks, and they're very good at convincing others that they are spiritual beings or on a spiritual path, and they use that as a mask to deceive us, to get what they want from us. And the way I read those beings is you can actually see, like if you could imagine, and sometimes I use holograms to see energy. And so I project like this energy field around them, and I can see if what they're saying, if the agenda behind what they're saying is coming out as clear energy out of their mouth. And if they're lying or they have a hidden agenda, you can just see the fragmented energy come out of their mouth, like black strings or fragmented energy. It's not like crystalline energy when someone is speaking truth, they're speaking from integrity.
Interesting. And I also heard you on a previous interview. You have a book, Liquid Mirror, and talk a little bit about a liquid mirror around yourself or putting it even around your children for protection. I guess I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about Liquid Mirror, the book, and the concept of Liquid Mirror.
Okay. The concept of liquid mirror is that everything that we are in right now is a mirror. Everything that we experience is a mirror of ourselves. So if we have relationships that are dysfunctional, that is a mirror of the insides of your soul that have, it points out the need for us to heal. So if we experience everything as a mirror, as a reflection of our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with our creator, then that is the pathway to see what we need to do for ourselves to clear ourselves from wounds, from dense energy, so that we can create the lives that we want with harmony, so that we can have harmonious relationships. So that's the foundation of liquid mirror. We use everything that we experience as a mirror to see what we need to do for ourselves, so that we can create our freedom from the matrix and then create the lives that we want to live.
Interesting. Now, you describe on your website, liquidmirror.org, going to some sacred sites in Peru and journeying with the master teacher healer plants, ayahuasca and wachuma. And I'd like to hear about your experience with nature's pharmaceuticals, especially ayahuasca. What were some of the spiritual epiphanies you had?
Hmm. These are very, very, very sacred plants, and they really should be legal. They're very sacred teacher healing plants. So you get guidance, and you also gain healing from every time that you ingest medicines like these, especially when you're working with a shaman that's highly qualified. Ayahuasca taught me how to connect with my animal guides mainly, and Wachuma I have more experience with. And that is the most beautiful plant. It has a very loving spirit. We call it grandfather because it has this loving way of softly, gently bringing up your wounds or your blocks or your insecurities. And then it just very gently shows you where those wounds came from and comforts you through being willing to feel where the source of that pain or the source of the wound, where it came from, so that it can be released in a loving environment. And then it guides you to help you understand why you have those wounds. So you don't have any shame or guilt around having those wounds, because we all innocently collect or gather our wounds throughout childhood, because the matrix here has been in charge. So especially for anyone really that has had a difficult childhood, we blame ourselves for being the way we are now, but really it's just the design of the matrix. Just by being born in any kind of culture here, we've just been indoctrinated with wounds. So if we take this journey, like what Wachuma taught me, is if we slow down and have the courage to feel where the wounds came from, the original source of the wounds. So it's the traumatic moments in our childhood. and let them come up and love them and release them and feel them. And the feeling of those wounds, the feeling of the pain is the release of that. And Liquid Mirror has several tools in there in terms of how to go about that. And it's the greatest gift anyone could give themselves, because every time that we release a fear, we broaden our frequency, and we can replace that fear with the opposite truth, which is things that align our mind with our soul, which is self-love and self-trust and love of creator and love of living and the passion for living. It sets us free. It's the most giving thing we can do for ourselves.
That is so interesting and so intense. Does Wachuma also include like past life issues that you've carried over?
Yes, several people have experienced past life memories. Yes,
And you did this in Peru.
yes.
Hmm. Now, on your website, you talk about broadening your self identity to include your fifth dimensional self, which I interpreted as raising your frequency or vibrational tone so that you're in alignment with your soul's purpose or mission. So, how can we do this? Broaden our identity to include our fifth dimensional selves. Like you were mentioning in Liquid Mirror, your book, you had some tools or exercises that can help us connect with our 5D higher self so that we can clearly recall our soul's intent for this incarnation. What are some of these tools or exercises?
The foundation of any spiritual path is relieving ourselves from our wounds and our fears, basically. And all fears are simply lies that we have been indoctrinated by. And they're not real. They don't have anything to stand on. We're just innocently carrying them around. And they limit us from our joy, from our passion, from our pleasures. So in Liquid Mirror, I have a breath release technique, and I have it in Liquid Mirror workbook is like a very thorough uh, really a very intense workshop that you can put yourself through, and it gives a big list of things to address to help you excavate every single fear that you have, including the unconscious ones, because those are the things that limit us. So in Liquid Mirror, there's plenty of tools on how to find out where they are, what they are, and how to release them through a breath technique, and being willing to feel is the biggest piece of that. Now, in terms of identifying with your fifth dimensional self, if and I do both. I think of it as burning a log at both ends. I've done a great deal of foundational work within myself to make sure that my mind isn't operated in any way by the matrix of fear. And then I replace that with love and integrity and truth and love of living, love of creator, love of self. And then fifth dimensional is another way to experience that kind of expansive freedom, because a soul really is innately a fifth dimensional being. It has a toroidal field, and it has this design of continuous emergence, exuberant continuous emergence. And so if we can embody that and remember what that feels like to be free, to be creators, to be creative, to have an infinite well of creativity, and then the mirror is your universe. You can create anything that you want here. You can create the life that you want. You can create the love that you want. You can experience and give the love that you want. You can experience satiation as a fifth dimensional being. And the opportunity that we're in right now with the dimensional shift that's happening, the earth is turning into a fifth dimensional being. And she already has started that process. So we are already reverberating back and forth between 3D, 4D, and 5D. We have access to fifth dimensional reality already. For example, have you noticed that your thoughts are more instantly manifested these days?
Absolutely. I feel the quickening. Absolutely.
Yes, and that's what creatorship feels like. That's what it feels like to be a fifth dimensional being, where you create from your passion, and you get to experience the enthrallment of creating from your creative passion. It's very very exciting and freeing. There's nothing better than that. It's totally worth giving your 100% to embody that identity now.
You know, Kelly, though there are a lot of people still entrenched in the matrix, in this 3D reality, and they're holding on to it tight. What do you think is going to happen to those people that are resisting this ascension process?
Resistance is suffering. So, you know, this is the path of least resistance. The more we resist, the more we suffer. And what are we resisting really? We're feeling our fears, and we're resisting releasing our fears. We're resisting feeling our fears. We're using apathy, numbing out, dumbing down, watching television. We have our addictions, we have our attachments, we have our codependent relationships. These are all unconscious ways that we're avoiding our deep inner work that set us free from that suffering.
Well, I want to say that the way I found you, or the way I started listening to this one interview with Lisa Harrison, and then you were talking about addictions. You were talking about how all addictions are the same. That resonated with me. What were you saying about addictions?
All addictions are avoidance of feeling. We use addictions to numb out so that we don't have to feel what we're suppressing. And it's understandable. We're innocently doing this. It's a really important piece that we address these fears lovingly, so that we have patience with ourselves. We can't get impatient with ourselves and feel like damaged goods just because we're carrying around wounds. It's not like that. So if we can slow down enough and be willing to feel and get out of those addictive patterns just long enough to heal. And once we heal what we're avoiding, the addictions disappear much easier. Then, yes, of course, then we can entrain ourselves to have better habits. But the foundation, you can't really heal from an addiction until you heal the wounds that are creating the addictions.
Now, I've also heard you discuss in previous interviews having had numerous spontaneous visits home, including journeys to the Pleiades. Now, by spontaneous visits, do you mean you were meditating or daydreaming and your spirit was spontaneously visiting? Or do you mean your physical body was transported in some way?
No, it was not my body wasn't transported, but I would have experiences of a very profoundly loving being coming into me. And I would feel it enter me from the back of my heart. And it would overwhelm me with this profound, unconditional love. And I identify that as home because that's source. I felt like Creator was personally visiting me because I had devoted my life to it. I surrendered my life to Creator, I guess 10 years ago. And since I made that move, I offered my life over to basically my love of Creator. And I said, my life for you. Let me be a pure conduit for your word, for your ways, for the ways of truth, for the ways of love. And since I did that, I started receiving these profound visitations they came in and released my fears, and they would last for hours. And I would just be sobbing and sobbing and sobbing for hours because this love, we don't have that kind of love here. I had never experienced that kind of unconditional love here anywhere, even in relationship. So it's another kind of love that I'm talking about. Unconditional love is just very rare here to begin with. So I thought of them as experiences of visiting home, because I would lose myself into this rapturous love affair with this being that was helping me and guiding me and teaching me and healing me.
Now, were they from Pleiades? What about your journeys to Pleiades?
No, I haven't had specific journeys to the Pleiades, but I have experienced journeys when I'm sitting outside, and I would experience them communing with me while I was looking at the constellation. And the constellation, it's a very faint, small constellation. And one night I was watching the constellation, well, it actually happened several nights, and there was this orb-like spiral coming out and emitting. I saw it visually communing with me. And I had a similar experience of that kind of feeling of unconditional love. I could feel the being behind that constellation, or maybe I don't know if it was a specific being or what, but I had that same kind of feeling of unconditional love and support that I could really trust.
I love that. That is so cool. That is so cool.
Mm.
And I do take a special interest in the Pleiadians. I love Barbara Marciniak, and I read all her books, and that was a gateway for me to get into this new realm that I stepped into. Now, I know I'm going to switch gears right now, and I know because of some of your earlier life experiences, you became familiar with the Illuminati or some of the darker forces when you were relatively young. Now, you recently wrote an article, How to Sustain Immunity from the Dark Forces and Create Sovereignty for All. And you mentioned the archons, something I am so curious about. First of all, what are they and how do they attempt to affect humanity?
I like to think of, and I'm not an expert on archons, but in my journeys, when I journeyed to those realms of darkness, I perceive the archons is not necessarily in the fourth dimension. I believe that they do have plenty of minions in the fourth dimension, but the archons are part of the Lucifer experiment, where they cut their source off from Creator, and they enlisted to play this role for us to create a cycle of darkness, so that souls could come in and experience awakening inside the beast of the belly. I'm sorry, the belly of the beast. And so the archons really they don't have emotion. They seem like more mechanical. They're more like gears, a system of darkness that just plays this role for us. It's very mechanical. And from that system, they created overlords in the fourth dimensional realm. And so we have Jehovah, we have Saturn, we have George Gabassalis talks about this beautifully. He has a wonderful book out called Our Journey Home, and fleshes this out quite thoroughly. I recommend that book very much. So in terms of the archons, they're really nothing to fear at all. They're just playing a role for us to test us to see if we can awaken from outside of the matrix that they have created for us.
Interesting. Well, and your article was very interesting. And I'm wondering because many of us, including myself, have never actually seen an ET in the physical form. I mean, other than maybe human hybrids, but we may psychically channel ET information or we may receive downloads of information. And in the article, you talk about having discernment and awareness about the energies we choose to encounter. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about this.
This is so important because there's so much channeled information out there right now on the internet. And I don't think there's a lot of channelers that aren't asking what the agenda is behind what they're telling them. So we have the Galactic Federation of Light. We have channelers that are channeling grays. And we're not asking the question, what is your agenda? What is your intent behind this intervention? And there's a vast plan out right now where they are aware of the bottleneck that we're all going through the eye of the needle, through Creator's love, through the ascension. And they are in denial. Even though that they know about the bottleneck, they're in denial. So they're scrambling, and they plan on, this is what full disclosure is all about. They want to get us comfortable with their UFOs and their spacecraft, come down and encourage us to worship them and board their spaceships with some kind of promised land. And where they plan on taking those beings that agree to get on the ships, they plan on taking them and find some pocket in the universe so they can avoid the ascension. They don't have the people's highest good in their intention whatsoever. They're not the least bit concerned about our soul sovereignty. They want to use souls so that they have another food source, an energetic food source. And they create suffering and misery and terror so that they can energetically feed off of those emotions. And so we have to use a great deal of discernment right now when it comes down to looking up at the sky and being fascinated with UFOs. And orbs are very, very different from UFOs. Orbs are fifth dimensional beings that are here to support us and aid us and guide us through our process here. That's very, very different. They have our soul sovereignty in their intention to assist us through that, awakening into our sovereignty and creating our sovereignty for ourselves, claiming it. And these other beings have a completely different agenda.
So, Kelly, when we're in alignment and we're choosing faith over fear, do you think that that type of dark energy would even approach us? I mean, would it be possible to encounter archons or draconian grays or some of these darker beings, for example, if we were in a very high vibrational 5D place, spiritually and emotionally?
I believe that's true, and at the same time, they try anyway. They've tried with a lot of people that I've spoken to, not archons in particular. I don't even think that they try that. It's their minions that go for those kinds of things, like the Greys and the Draconians. And and they use beauty, they use enticements, make promises. We'll give you youth, we'll give you wealth, we'll set you free financially. All these kinds of promises that they make, and really, you can ask questions if these beings show up because they can't lie. If you say, what is your agenda? What is your intention? Show me your true face. Show me your true self. I want to see behind the mask. And they have to answer. We are already immune with just knowing what the questions are to ask.
When we say show up, do they actually show up in physical form? Like, have you ever actually seen a gray?
No, I have never seen one in true form that has shown up in my reality. But when I journey to the other realities, I can, view their structures and their ways. Now, I've spoken to other people that have had experiences of them coming in their dreams or coming at night. We know about the alien abductions and their hybrid children program. So a lot of beings have actually met them in person and experienced horrific torture by that whole experience.
Yeah. Now, moving past the dark side, much of your message and your teachings revolve around ascension, helping people wishing to awaken and evolve and ascend into the fifth dimension. What do you actually do? I mean, what is your process to bring them to this point when they're ready to let go of the chains that bind them to the old paradigm?
Well, first of all, the foundation is healing our wounds. And from there, it's it becomes easier and easier to practice presence. And presence, really, the biggest piece of presence is full engagement. When we don't have apathy and we're not using our addictions to distract ourselves, then we can drop in and be fully engaged in our lives here, in our relationships. We can engage our hearts more and feel our love for one another more, feel our love for our creator, to love existing, to love living, to love our loved ones, to love more than we've ever loved before, to love as if this were our last day. And that is how I practice ascension now, because I believe the ascension is happening now, and it's happening through our hearts, it's happening through our love, it's happening through our willingness to expand and awaken.
And you recently wrote another article addressing and releasing our fears of ascension. And that's an interesting article. So, what do you think are some of the biggest fears people have? And how do you help people work through these fears?
Well, the biggest fear is the fear of God. And if you just look at our religions, they basically infiltrated the fear of God in most of the religions, or even made it just so far away and separate from us that we can't even have a personal relationship with that which created us from love. So, how we address our fears of God by recognizing where our beliefs came from that made us decide that it was something to fear or not to trust, or anything that made us believe that it is just so far beyond and outside of ourselves that we don't have direct access to it. We've been taught that we have to have a middle person, a middleman, a pastor, or a religion to get to God. We've been taught that we can't even have a personal conversation with Creator. Only the saints can have that. And I don't believe that at all. They've taught us that so that we wouldn't have a connection with our source. And so for now, all we have to do is eliminate and delete those fears and those beliefs that are not true, those lies that we have about God, and delete them, release them, free ourselves from those limiting structures, and then start communing with that loving being. Who are you? Why did you create me? How do you see me? Take a look at yourself through the eyes of God so that you can see how much love that it holds for you, so you can see your own perfection. It's a beautiful, beautiful experience. And this is what I do in sessions with people. Once we relieve them from their beliefs, limiting self-beliefs and limiting beliefs around Creator, and then they get to sit in the lap of God and commune with it and feel it just by opening the heart and communing and saying, where are you? Who are you? What are you? Can I feel you? Can I talk to you? Can I hear you? And people generally experience it for the first time.
See, this is why I just love your message. This is what you're saying really resonates with me because our system, our world around us, what we're seeing was so cleverly designed to create dependency so that we wouldn't look within. And that is the heart of the matter. Exactly the way that you're working with your clients and really taking a look at these old beliefs that are not based on truth. They are part of the programming that we are just this is like unpeeling the layers of an onion. And I want to hear about your views on unconditional love versus codependent love. I mean, in other interviews I've actually heard you talk about these cords connecting two people in relationships where partners drain each other of their energy. And I'd like to hear a little more about that.
Okay. When we are insecure, when we have insecurities, we outsource our validation. So in codependent relationships, we are looking for another one to validate our self-worth, but it doesn't work. It's impossible because when two people are wounded, you're never going to get that kind of validation. We have to have self-love to have a relationship that is founded on unconditional love for one another, where we celebrate each other's path. We celebrate each other's exploration of self. We celebrated each other's creative expressions and progress and uh, projects or passions. It's a completely different kind of love that not many humans know or have the tools in this day and age to, well, actually we have more tools now than we have before, but over the last centuries, we haven't had the tools to have healthy relationships with one another.
Well, all we've ever known or all we've ever been taught is conditional love. It's a means of control. If you
Mm.
if you don't do this, then I'll withhold love. If you do this, I'll be happy with you. So this is what we've experienced from the earliest age, and even in our school and in our education system. So this is what we've seen. How do you help couples?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in parenting as well. With couples, we start with a positive way of communicating with each other where we're not attacking each other or defending ourselves or trying to be right or trying to prove the other person wrong. That's a really important piece. And once we have the communication tools in place and we are well practiced at that, then we start using reflective listening so that we can, if we don't have our defenses up and we don't have our swords out, we're not trying to attack each other, then we can actually open our hearts and really open up to understand one another. What are your needs? How can I support you in what you're wanting to do with our relationship and with your life, with your career? How can I support you? So the paradigm shifts of how to relate to one another. And again, the we also work with the emotional wounds that create the cords because all cords come from emotional wounds of insecurities. And again, all insecurities are fears and all fears are lies. And lies don't have anything to stand on. So when we take the fears out, we replace them with the opposite truth, and we do that with each individual, then the couple has a strong foundation to actually exchange unconditional love with one another.
Now, can you actually see the cords?
Yes, I can see dark chords and I can see light chords. I can tell when they're integral or when they're still outsourcing.
So even if couples are in counseling with you, this is a great way to go through counseling quickly. I mean, talk about this is the opposite of psychotherapy,
It is.
is because it's a brief process. It is an enlightened process because it's in the light because all is known and all is seen. And so you can actually literally envision or you can actually literally see these chords changing from darker chords to light chords.
Yes. When there is progress, yes.
Have you seen relationships where one person is very resistant or
Yes.
still competitive, but the other one is
Yes.
ready to love
Yes.
unconditionally?
Yes. Absolutely. And that is when I say that it is time to transplant. I think of it as a pot, when you transplant your house plants and the roots don't have any place to grow. I think of relationships like that when one person is not wanting to work on their own personal growth and they're still wanting to project, and the other person is really willing to grow and experience expansiveness and love, then that is a clear sign that it's time to end the relationship so that they can both move on and do whatever it is that they need to do.
I like the way that you frame that transplant because it takes out a lot of the emotional stigma that goes along with a breakup.
Ah, yes.
I like that.
Sometimes it's healthier just to move on.
Yeah, rather than rebuild something that is broken.
Yeah.
It's like almost like our government and, and all of our institutions that we have in place. It's going to be, what do you see with this period of ascension that we're going through? What do you see for the future of the earth or the future of mankind? I know it's a big question.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't,
a big question. And what I focus on is the earth. And this is what the Inca prophesies. And they say that the earth is turning into a star, a fifth dimensional being, and the beings that choose to be here will be fifth dimensional beings as well. So I don't see any of the systems that are in place right now being in existence once we are fifth dimensional beings here. It's not possible.
so what would happen to all the rest of the people that were in resistance and did not want to move along with the fifth dimensional agenda?
We all go through the eye of the needle. That is what ascension means, that we're all going back into the loving embrace of our creator. That is what the eye of the needle is. So, all beings, this is not an exclusive project or an exclusive event. All beings, including the dark ones, are going to get a big rest into the in breath of God. And then from that point on, every soul will be able to choose, and because they will finally have true soul sovereignty. Once they find their way all the way back into Hunabku, then they will have the free will and they will have a whole lot of support to decide what they want to do. And some beings will go to other 3D planets where the planets that will be in more harmony. Other beings will choose to stay in 4D and play the 4D game. And other beings will go all the way home to their star families. A lot of the indigenous ones will be going back to their star families and taking a deep rest. And then they get to decide where they go on from there. A lot of beings will experience being creators in other realms. And some beings will choose to come back to Earth and midwife Earth into the new way of being. We'll be creating new cultures. We'll be creating a new way of relating to one another. We'll be creating a new way of sustainable living. But as fifth dimensional beings are luminous beings. We're spherical beings that can shapeshift and create our bodies into whatever we want. That's the definition of a fifth dimensional being. So that's the only way I can see it playing out.
Now, are you experiencing ascension symptoms as well?
Yes.
What does it feel like for you? I mean, I know I am too, but it would be very validating to hear somebody else describe this experience too. And it would be interesting for our listeners to hear how they know they're ascending.
In general, if you are experiencing more expansiveness and freedom, that is a sign of experiencing the ascension now. If you're having an easier time with practicing presence, that is another sign. For me personally, my appetite has changed significantly. I don't have any desire to eat. I just kind of force myself to eat to keep up with my busy lifestyle. I've heard of other people as well having a loss of appetite, a loss of attraction to food, because in the fifth dimension we don't consume energy to live. So I think that's all telling. What are some of the symptoms that you have?
For me, I almost feel like I'm in a dream state all the time. I
Uh,
go from like sleeping to waking up to sleeping to waking up, and I'm remembering my dreams very vividly. The same thing with the appetite, except it's easier for me to force myself to eat. I just still like food so much, but I don't need as much of it. I feel the same way. Sleep patterns, I'm waking up in the middle of the night. As a matter of fact, I want to stay up all night, and I want to sleep during the day. I'm a bit off kilter sleep-wise. I also sometimes feel like out of it, sometimes like just a dizzy, woozy.
Mhm.
The dreams are probably the biggest indicator that something is very different for me because I've never remembered my dreams.
Yeah, I have the same thing, but my dreams are different. I'm traveling in my sleep time, and my patterns are very, very different. I wake up in the middle of the night and I stay awake for the most part. And I use that time to practice presence to keep my thoughts still and breathe.
I also like sometimes if I eat the wrong things or if I eat heavy things, I actually am literally sick from it.
Right. And that is so normal. And our bodies are shifting right now. I do believe that our DNA is already shifting. And so if we're responsive to our body's needs, then we can free ourselves from these structures. And really, all of us are going through an initiation right now. It's going to be something different for every person. And so it's really something worth addressing so that because that's part of the process is everything that we have some kind of attachment to is this is an invitation to release all of those attachments. We're freeing ourselves through each time that we do that.
Yeah, yeah, and very well said. So now, in closing, I want to remind our listeners that you are the author and co author of two wonderful books, Liquid Mirror, and the newer book, Surfing the Transformational Waves of 2012. Where can our listeners find your books, and how can they reach out and contact you?
My website is liquidmirror.org, just like it's spelled. And my email address is KELLYLASHA at gmail.com.
Kelly, this has been an amazing interview. Is there a message you wish to leave with our listeners on a closing note?
Yes, we don't need to fear our fears. It is completely worth dropping in and allowing ourselves to feel them so that they can be released. And then we just need to trust ourselves and trust our loving creator, trust that it is there, that it is true, that it is real, and that it loves us immensely. And to connect personally, intimately, and emotionally with our creator. And that is our ticket home to the fifth dimension.
Oh, beautiful message. Beautiful closing message. And thank you so much, Kelly, for joining us today. I had such a great time talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, and thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in to Embracing What's Real. I'm your host, Helane Lipson, sending love, light, and blessings to all. For more information about upcoming shows, come see me at www.insightsbyhelane.com, www.insightsbyhelane.com. Till we meet again, please remember, you are a divine being, so turn on your love light and let it shine. Namaste.